Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video, wherever you are, whatever you may be doing. Thank you so much for making Ref Brandon and the Todd Family part of your day. We always greatly appreciate it. I wanted to come on here live on this Friday night so that hopefully I get some people that tune in live and leave some comments in the comments section down below. Make sure if you're here that you give the video a like and a thumbs up. If you have not yet subscribed, please do so. And in a few minutes, I want to talk about Greg Sankey making himself look crazy and stupid if you actually do like I do and look past the conference affiliation stuff and just see things the way they are. I'll talk about that coming up here in a few minutes. Marcus, I'm great. How you doing, man? Good to have you here on this Friday night. Well, let's talk about some college football next to the last weekend of the regular season. Hey there, Austin. Last night, Georgia Tech got their 7th win of the season by defeating NC State 30-29. Georgia Tech led most of the game, and NC State actually scored twice in about 5 minutes in the fourth quarter to take the lead, and then Georgia Tech came back and took the lead. And then NC State came back down the field and kicked a 58-yard field goal that was wide to the left by about a foot and a half. So Georgia Tech escapes with a 1-point win. And I got to be honest with you, I heard an interview with Georgia Tech head coach Brent Key this morning on the radio. And I'll be honest with you, if I was currently a collegiate football player, I think Brent Key would be fun to play for. He has a great personality, and you can tell that he wants to win. He's happy where he is, and you can tell that his players love him, and he loves his players. He'd be fun to play for. Hey there, Ghost. Glad to have you here. I think Georgia Tech is definitely trending in the right direction. Tonight, we have Temple and UTSA on ESPN2. We have Purdue and Michigan State on Fox. And coming up here in a few minutes, West Coast game, so late night game, we have UNLV and San Jose State on Fox Sports 1. And speaking of Georgia Tech, before I talk about the games, tomorrow, Haynes King, their quarterback, missed a couple of games with an injury. He came back against Miami, only threw 6 passes, but he completed all of them. Well, last night against the Wolfpack, he only threw 3 passes and completed all of them. So he's gone 9 for 9 in 2 games. But last night there was a couple of times that NC State intentionally, purposely left Georgia Tech's tight end wide open about 20 yards upfield, just daring Haynes King to throw the ball, and he couldn't throw 20 yards. So it's obvious he has a shoulder, an arm, an elbow, something injured in his throwing arm. But Georgia Tech's offense, despite the fact that he can't throw the ball at all, still looks better with him on the field. But I think their backup quarterback, that freshman they have, is going to be a pretty good player. Coming up tomorrow, noon on Fox, the game of the day, the game that's been talked about for probably about 2 weeks now, Indiana and Ohio State. And I mentioned the other day that, I can't for the life of me figure out why fans are still living in the late 90s thinking that playing at noon is a bad time to play. Ohio State is the number 2 team in America right now, and by the time next Saturday gets here and they play Michigan, 7 of their 12 games are going to be at noon. And tomorrow, if you look at tomorrow's slate, the noon time slot, every single game is going to be a competitive game. Now, there's other time slots where you see some games that sound like they could be good, but a couple of games that just sound awful. But the noon time slot, every single game on paper should be a competitive game. On ESPN, we have Wake Forest and Miami. Wake Forest has a pretty good offense, but no defense. So I think they'll score some points against Miami, but I don't know if they can stop Miami at all. The Hurricanes might score at least 50. Ole Miss and Florida on ABC. SMU and Virginia on ESPN2. Iowa and Maryland on the Big Ten Network. UConn and Syracuse on the ACC Network. North Carolina and Boston College on the CW. And I can't figure out what Mac Brown is thinking. First of all, he should have retired 20 years ago because he sucks. But second of all, when they lost that game to James Madison a few weeks ago, rumor was that Mac Brown pretty much wanted to retire after that game because of how bad the Heels looked. And somebody talked him into staying. I don't know who it was, but they should be fired immediately. But I guess they're still there. But somebody talked Mac Brown into staying. And then about 2 weeks ago, there was a rumor that came out that said after the season, Mac Brown was going to retire because I believe he's 73 years old. He was just trying to make it through the season. Well, today, word came out that Mac Brown says he'll be back next year. The funny thing was, I was reading an article about it. I read about 5 or 6 articles about it to see what everybody said. One of the articles that I read, it said that Mac Brown is returning in 2025 despite the struggles of this year. And I thought, there are no struggles of this year. They're 6-4. And I've said on this channel many a times, probably 50 times already, that Mac Brown is a 8-4 coach, 7-5 coach. That's what he is. That's what he's always done. And right now they're on pace to go 7-5 or 8-4. So there are no struggles. They're right where they're going to be every year that Mac Brown is their head coach. Illinois and Rutgers on Peacock. Sam Houston State and Jacksonville State on the CBS Sports Network. Now, of course, we know Jacksonville State is coached by Rich Rodriguez, who used to coach at West Virginia, and honestly, probably never should have left. He's never had the same success since he left, and the Mountaineers have never been as good since he left. But, supposedly the Mountaineers coach Neil Brown is on the hot seat. I've been hearing about that since early October. And supposedly some insiders are trying to get Rich Rodriguez to return to West Virginia when Neil Brown gets fired. I guess we'll have to wait and see where that goes. 12:45 on the SEC Network, a game that really shouldn't even be close, shouldn't even be on TV, to be honest with you. UMass and Georgia. 3:30 on ABC, we have Kentucky and Texas. CBS, Penn State, and Minnesota. Minnesota's looked pretty good their last couple of games, so let's see if they can hang with Penn State. Tomorrow, BYU and Arizona State on ESPN, and the winner of that game will be in the driver's seat, definitely, with only 1 week to go in the Big 12 after tomorrow, because BYU has just 1 loss, and Arizona State, of course, has 2 losses. So if Arizona State wins that game, they have the tiebreaker. We have Colorado and Kansas on Fox. Normally, every week I say if you don't watch Clemson, you're watching the wrong game, but tomorrow you should watch them because it's Military Appreciation Day, and nobody does Military Appreciation Day like Clemson. But since they're playing the Citadel, and most folks think it's going to be a blowout, if you don't watch Clemson tomorrow, I will forgive you. This time, that game is 3:30 on the CW. Northwestern and Michigan on Fox Sports. One, Michigan just went out and pretty much paid $10 million to get a quarterback who was committed somewhere else and changed his mind Thursday and pretty much said, "Hey, I'm going to Michigan because of the money, but Michigan needs a quarterback." Pretty doggone bad. I heard a radio personality this morning talking about how college football is pretty much the NFL now, which I've been saying that here on the channel for 2 years now, that you can't watch college football and say, "Well, I watch college football because it's different than the NFL. It's not all about the money." Well, it is all about the money. Now, if you still like the college game better, that's fine, but you can't say, "Well, in college, it's not about the money," because it is. It's just like the NFL now. So if you like college better, it's fine, but don't give me that hogwash that it's better because it's not about the money, when in reality, it's about the money. Don't fool yourself. Don't kid yourself. Don't make yourself look stupid. College football is just like the NFL, and it's about the money. We have Wisconsin and Nebraska on the Big Ten Network, and now there are rumors that Nebraska's quarterback Dylan Raiola is going to transfer at season's end. And I made the comment here on the channel after, I want to say week 2, that to me, Dylan Raiola, he looks fat, he looks slow, he looks sluggish, he's got a rubber arm. I mean, nothing about him screams five-star quarterback. He was extremely overrated coming out of high school, in my personal opinion. But he's still the best quarterback on Nebraska's roster, and it's not close. That doesn't mean Raiola's great, because he's not, but he's the best thing they've got, just like DJ at Florida State. DJ's not great, but he was the best thing Florida State had. And Dylan Raiola's not great, but he's the best option Nebraska has, so we will find out if he transfers coming up here in a couple of weeks, since this season is almost over with. An old-fashioned Pac-12 rivalry that's now going to be an ACC rivalry. 3:30 on the ACC network. Stanford and California. Central Florida and West Virginia on ESPN U. San Diego State and Utah State on the CBS Sports Network. And if you're watching live right now, I really appreciate it. Feel free to leave a comment in the comment section down below. Make sure you give the video a like and a thumbs up. If you have not yet subscribed, please do so. Helps the channel out tremendously and takes about 2 seconds. 4 o'clock on ESPN2, Pittsburgh and Louisville. 4:15 on the SEC network, Missouri and Mississippi State. Army and Notre Dame is the 7 o'clock primetime game on NBC. And we know Army will keep the ball for 12 or 13 minutes at a time. So if they can hold the ball for long periods of time and score, they've got a chance. And if Notre Dame turns the ball over at all, they're in trouble, because when Army gets the ball, they're going to keep it for a whole quarter. So if Notre Dame ain't careful and they turn the ball over, it'll be halftime, and the Irish have had the ball twice. CBS Sports Network tomorrow night, 7 o'clock, Boise State and Wyoming. 7:30 on ESPN U, Marshall and Old Dominion. The CW, Washington State and Oregon State. Fox Sports 1, Baylor and Houston. 7:30 on ABC, Alabama and Oklahoma. And if Oklahoma don't find an offense pretty quick, that game is over at halftime. And believe it or not, even though Oklahoma's only 5-5, I have not heard as many rumors of Brent Venables being on the hot seat as I thought I would. I mean, I don't think he's getting fired in year 3. But usually at a program like Oklahoma, every time you have a down season, the coach is on the hot seat. And with Venables, it really doesn't seem like it's that bad to me. So either nobody thinks he's getting fired, or everybody knows he's not getting fired, because there's not rumors of him being dismissed, even though the Sooners have struggled this year like I thought there would be. ESPN, Texas A&M, and Auburn. Fox has Iowa State and Utah. Then 7:45 on the SEC network, Vanderbilt and LSU. And I would love to see Vanderbilt win that game. I don't know if they can, but I would love it because the LSU fans already want Brian Kelly gone. And can you imagine the heat that's going to be on Brian Kelly, at least from a media fan base perspective? Maybe not reality from the AD side, but at least from the fans and the media. Can you imagine the heat that Brian Kelly will be on and be under if he loses tomorrow night to Vanderbilt in prime time? 8 o'clock on the ACC network, Virginia Tech and Duke. ESPN2, Cincinnati and Kansas State. Then 10:30 on NBC we have USC, UCLA. Fox Sports 1, Air Force, Nevada. 10:30 on the CBS Sports Network, Colorado State and Fresno State. And that is all the games tonight and tomorrow that'll be on national television. I don't talk about all the games that are on ESPN Plus because honestly, I don't know how many people, if anybody, actually has those channels. But I want to talk about Greg Sankey for a few minutes, and it's funny because I mentioned this in my video, I believe on Wednesday. I did not do a top 10 countdown this week. I think it was Wednesday night in my video. I talked about how I don't understand why people get in an uproar, get in a tizzy over the playoff rankings system because, first of all, it's all opinion based because there are no parameters and no rules. And secondly, college football is just like the NFL now. It's the same thing. Every time the NFL changes a rule, college adopts that same rule. College football this year even put in a 2-minute warning. Where'd that come from? The NFL. College football now is the NFL minor league system. In every way, shape, form, and fashion, the college game now is played and coached just like the NFL. And in the NFL, they have rules on who makes the playoffs. Everybody knows that. But college football has way more teams than the NFL does, so you can't use the same system the NFL does. But in the NFL, if the season ends and you have two AFC teams battling for a wild card, and one finishes 10-7, and the other one goes 9-8, everybody knows the 10-7 team goes to the playoffs. Why? They won more games. The NFL doesn't say, well, this 9-8 team, they might have had one more loss, but they had a tougher schedule, so they get the wild card. Or, well, this 9-8 team, they were in the tougher division, tougher conference, so they win the wild card. No, it goes to the team that has the better record. And that's pretty much the same system the College Football Playoff Committee uses. They go by wins and losses, and you should. And I've said numerous times here on the channel, if wins and losses don't matter, why do you play the game? And you've got all these fans of all these teams that are mad because, they like a team that has 2 or 3 losses and they're ranked behind the team that has 1 loss. Why are you ranked behind them? They have 1 loss and you have 2 or 3. It's very simple. But people like to take things that are very simple and make them very complicated when the reality of it is they're not complicated. But it was funny that I talked about that Wednesday night, and then yesterday I saw an article where Greg Sankey released the strength of schedule for all the teams in the SEC. First of all, that's what 5-year-olds do. I can see 2 5-year-olds on the school playground talking about 2 teams, and one of them says, well, Team A right here had a much tougher schedule, and his little 5-year-old friend says, yeah, you're right. That sounds like a 5-year-old conversation. First of all, that's childish. Strength of schedule is about the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. And second of all, when you release that and you just put out each team's strength of schedule and you don't release who wins and who loses, just the strength of schedule, you make it seem like the wins and losses don't matter. The fact that somebody lost this game does not matter. The more important thing is the game was played because they played a good team. Who cares? Wins and losses matter. I don't know why people act like wins and losses don't matter. Wins and losses should be the most important thing. If it's not the most important thing, then why, out beside each team, you have their logo, their name, if they're ranked, and out beside it'll have their conference record and their overall record. If wins and losses don't matter, then why do we keep up with wins and losses? Why don't we just let every team play 12 games, don't write down who wins, don't write down who loses, and end of the season, just go back and look at schedules and put teams in the playoffs based on who played a tougher schedule? Because wins and losses don't matter. It is the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life that you go out and put out each team in your conference strength of schedule. Who the heck cares? You might as well just put out a big old banner that says who wins the game does not matter. The most important thing is this game was played, and this was a hard game to play. Who lost don't matter. The game was played. It's dumb. But at the same time, I will say Greg Sankey does a phenomenal job, not of looking dumb because he does a bad job of looking dumb because that was pretty dumb, but he does a phenomenal job of promoting his conference. No conference promotes itself like the SEC does, and each commissioner of each conference should promote their conference like the SEC does. And that's why people that love the SEC, and the people that hate the SEC because it gets treated differently. And it's like having children. It's like you have 4 children, and each Power 5 conference is one child, and then you treat the SEC child differently. Everybody that has kids knows you're supposed to treat every kid fairly. So in college football, each conference should be treated fairly, but they're not. They treat the SEC differently, just like earlier today, I saw somebody post on social media saying, why is it that, Missouri played in the Big 12 for 100 years and never could win the Big 12? They come to the SEC and they won the SEC East, I want to say 2 straight years in their second and third year in the conference. And nobody talks about that. But now SMU might win the ACC in their first year in the conference, which, by the way, if you follow the channel, you know that before the season started, I said, look out for SMU. But anyway, I digress. People are talking about, it makes the ACC look really bad that SMU might win it. And somebody commented and said, why is it that nobody talks about Missouri winning the SEC East 2 straight years, but everybody talks about SMU might win the ACC? I said, because we don't talk about things that make the SEC look bad, only things that make them look good. If they look bad, it never happened. Just like the year Oklahoma, when they were in the Big 12 back in the day, destroyed Alabama in a bowl game, never got talked about. The year Boise State played Georgia in the regular season back a few years ago, Boise State beat Georgia and never got talked about. But had Georgia beat Boise State, you'd never hear the end of it. And that's just the way people are. And that's why the SEC haters hate it. Just like almost every year, Clemson beats South Carolina. Now, this year, it's not going to surprise me at all to see South Carolina beat Clemson. But if you look at the overall totality of the years of the traditional rivalry, Clemson wins almost twice as much as the Gamecocks do. But every time Clemson wins, people will just say, well, that's because the Gamecocks suck. But when South Carolina wins, it's, oh, big bad SEC. So wait a minute. The big bad SEC is bad and awesome when the Gamecocks win, but when the Gamecocks lose, they suck. You can't have it both ways. Florida State years beats Florida. When Florida State beats Florida, it's, oh, well, that's because Florida sucks. But when Florida beats Florida State, it's, oh, big bad SEC. And this year, Florida should beat Florida State by 3 touchdowns. Florida State's flat out awful. And when they do, it's going to be, oh, let's shake them pom-poms, big bad SEC. But when Florida State beats Florida, that's because Florida sucks. And anybody that follows Danny Cannell knows that's the same way Danny Cannell is. Danny Cannell says, I'm not saying that the SEC ain't the best conference. All I'm saying is we need fairness. And people act like that you can never say anything bad about the SEC, and that's garbage. There's good and there's bad, just like in every other conference. But for some reason, for most of America, when the SEC does something good, we talk about it for 97 years. They do something bad, it never gets mentioned. And it shouldn't be that way. And that's why the SEC haters are SEC haters, because they get treated differently. They get treated unfairly. And it should be that way. It should all be about fairness, and it's not. But any thoughts on any of this, please feel free to let me know. Let's go ahead and get our dad joke of the day in here. Archaeologists unearth the largest leg bone ever discovered. It was quite a shindig. And that does it for today's Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Until next time, it's Ref Brandon saying, just like in pro wrestling, life can be over by the count of 3. Tell your friends and family how much you love them.